I am Grace, 20 years old, when I first felt it. The small, hard lump at the base of my neck during my evening shower. Not painful, just there. Unwelcome. Foreign. I remembered my biology professor warning us about unusual lumps. My trembling fingers traced its outline as cold water ran down my back. My parents and I never had the best relationship, but I needed to tell them. I had no idea this discovery would begin 6 months of living hell. Before I share my fight for survival, let me know where you are watching from. Hit subscribe and stay with me through this journey that nearly cost me everything. The morning after discovering the lump, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The steam from the shower had fogged up the glass, but I could still make out my features. Shoulder-length, brown hair, dark circles under my eyes from late-night study sessions, and a worried expression that I tried to mask with a forced smile. I was in my second year of pre-med at Northwestern University, working tirelessly toward my dream of becoming a doctor. The irony was not lost on me that I was now facing a potential medical issue of my own. My family lived in a spacious suburban home in Evanston, Illinois. My mother, Karen, worked as a nurse at a local family clinic. She was always particular about appearances, both physical and social. Everything had to be perfect, especially when it came to her daughters. My father, Thomas, was a civil engineer who spent most of his time either at work or in his home office. He was passive, letting my mother make most of the family decisions. Then there was my younger sister, Lily. At 16, she was the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect attitude, perfect everything, according to my parents. I waited until breakfast to mention the lump to my mother. We were all seated around the kitchen island. Lily was texting under the table, my father was reading the newspaper, and my mother was organizing her day planner. "Mom," I said hesitantly, putting down my spoon of cereal. "I found something yesterday, a lump at the base of my neck. I think I should get it checked out." She barely looked up from her planner. "Grace, you always exaggerate everything. It is probably just a swollen lymph node." "But it feels different," I insisted. "It is hard and does not move when I touch it." My mother sighed dramatically. "You are studying too hard and stressing yourself out. Stop looking for ways to get attention." My father glanced up briefly, then returned to his newspaper without a word. Lily smirked. "This is not for attention," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I really think I should see a doctor." "We will see," my mother said dismissively. "If it is still there in a couple of weeks, maybe then we will look into it." That was the end of the conversation. I went to my room, closed the door, and checked the lump again. It was definitely still there. I decided to monitor it myself, since my parents did not seem concerned. Each day, I would check the lump, taking photos with my phone to track any changes. After 2 weeks, I noticed it had grown slightly larger. Along with the growth came mild headaches and unusual fatigue. I was falling asleep during study sessions, something that had never happened before. Once again, I approached my mother. This time, she was sorting laundry in the utility room. "Mom, that lump I mentioned. It is getting bigger, and I am having headaches. I really think I need to see a doctor." She dropped a towel into the basket with more force than necessary. "Grace, you have finals coming up. You are just trying to find a way out of studying. You and I both know how important these exams are for your future." "This has nothing to do with my exams," I protested. "I am genuinely concerned." "You know," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I had grown to hate, "when I was your age, I never made excuses. I worked hard, studied hard, and never complained about every little ache and pain. I felt tears of frustration welling up. "This is not a little ache or pain. Something is wrong, Mom." Enough, Grace, she snapped. Go study. This conversation is over. That night, I started researching symptoms online. Lumps at the base of the skull could be anything, from benign cysts to swollen lymph nodes to various types of tumors. The information was overwhelming and scary. I found myself spiraling into worst-case scenarios, but I tried to stay rational. Without a proper medical examination, there was no way to know what I was dealing with. I tried talking to my father when he came home late that night, catching him alone in the kitchen as he made a sandwich. Dad, I am worried about this lump on my neck. Mom will not listen to me. Can you please help me get an appointment with a doctor? He looked uncomfortable, chewing slowly before responding. Your mother knows best about these things, Grace. She is a nurse, after all. If she does not think it is serious, then it probably is not. But what if she is wrong this time? I asked desperately. He patted my shoulder awkwardly. Try not to worry so much. It will probably go away on its own. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than ever. My own parents, the people who were supposed to protect me and take care of me, were dismissing something that could be seriously wrong with my health. I lay awake touching the lump, wondering what was growing inside me and why no one seemed to care. 2 months passed and the lump had grown to the size of a quail egg. I could feel it easily now, protruding slightly when I tilted my head forward. The headaches had become more frequent, often waking me up in the middle of the night. I started experiencing dizziness and nausea, especially in the mornings. Sleep became elusive, and when I did manage to drift off, nightmares plagued me. My academic performance was suffering. I, who had always maintained a near-perfect GPA, was now struggling to stay focused during lectures. My grades were slipping, and my professors had begun to notice. After a particularly difficult organic chemistry class where I had nearly fainted, Professor Miller asked me to stay behind. Grace, is everything all right? He asked, concern etched on his face. Your last 2 assignments were below your usual standard, and you seem distracted in class. I hesitated, then decided to be honest. I have been having some health issues, Professor. I found a lump on my neck a couple months ago, but my parents think I am exaggerating. He frowned. Have you seen a doctor? No, I admitted. My mom is a nurse and says it is nothing to worry about. Grace, he said firmly, you need to get that checked out. Would you like me to help you find resources through the University Health Center? I thanked him, but declined. Deep down, I still hoped my parents would come around and help me. I did not want to cause more family tension by going behind their backs. That weekend, I confided in my best friend Emily during our study session at the campus library. You have to see a doctor, Grace, she insisted after I showed her the lump. This is not normal. If your parents will not help, we will figure it out ourselves. Emily had always been my rock. We had been friends since freshman orientation, bonding over our shared love of science and terrible campus food. She was studying biochemistry and was one of the most practical people I knew. What if it is something serious? I whispered, voicing my deepest fear for the first time. Then the sooner you get treatment, the better, she said, squeezing my hand. Let us make an appointment with the family doctor. I will go with you. Feeling empowered, I called Dr. Wilson's office the next day and scheduled an appointment for the following week. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Finally, I would get some answers. But my relief was short-lived. That evening, my mother stormed into my room, waving her phone. The clinic called to confirm your appointment, she said, her voice eerily calm. An appointment I knew nothing about. I need to get this checked out, Mom, I said, trying to stand my ground. You went behind my back, she accused. After everything I have told you, do you know how embarrassing this is? I work with these people, Grace. This is about my health, not your embarrassment, I argued. she scoffed. I canceled the appointment. You are not going. You? What? I was incredulous. You cannot do that. I absolutely can. You are on our family insurance and you are living under our roof. You want to act like an adult. Start by respecting your parents' decisions. Your decisions could be putting my life at risk, I shouted, something I rarely did. My father appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable as usual. What is going on in here? Grace is being dramatic again, my mother said dismissively. Making doctor's appointments behind our backs for that imaginary problem of hers. I looked pleadingly at my father. Dad, please. Something is wrong with me. I need to see a doctor. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Listen to your mother, Grace. She knows what she is talking about. I felt utterly betrayed. Neither of you is listening to me. This conversation is over, my mother declared, turning to leave. Focus on your studies instead of inventing problems. After they left, I broke down crying. Emily was right. I needed to take matters into my own hands. My sister Lily walked by my open door and paused. What is wrong with you now? She asked, her tone somewhere between curiosity and annoyance. Nothing you would care about, I muttered. She lingered in the doorway. Is this about that lump thing again? Mom says you are just being dramatic. Of course that is what she says, I replied bitterly. And you believe everything she tells you, right? Lily shrugged. You have always been the one who makes everything into a big deal. Remember when you thought you had appendicitis, but it was just gas? This is different, I insisted. This is real. Whatever she said, walking away. Just stop causing problems for everyone. That night, I emailed my Aunt Lisa, my mother's younger sister, who lived in Denver. Aunt Lisa had always been the black sheep of the family, choosing a career in environmental science over marriage and children, much to my grandmother's dismay. She and my mother had a strained relationship, but she had always been kind to me. I explained my situation, including photos of the lump and a list of my symptoms. Her response came the next morning. Grace, this sounds serious. I am coming to visit next month. In the meantime, document everything. Take daily photos, keep a symptom journal, and try to see a doctor any way you can. Your health comes first. Love, Aunt Lisa. Her message gave me hope. I started a detailed journal recording every symptom, every dismissal from my parents, and daily photographs of the lump. If no one would believe me now, I would have evidence they could not ignore. 4 months after discovering the lump, my condition had deteriorated significantly. Concentrating on anything for more than a few minutes had become nearly impossible. The lump was now the size of a chicken egg, occasionally causing sharp pains that radiated down my neck and into my shoulder. My balance was affected. I found myself stumbling or needing to hold on to walls to steady myself. One morning I fell in the shower, causing a loud crash that brought my mother running. What happened? She demanded, opening the bathroom door without knocking. I sat on the shower floor, water streaming over me, too dizzy to stand. I lost my balance. For a brief moment, I thought I saw concern flash across her face, but it quickly hardened into her usual expression of disapproval. You need to be more careful, she said, tossing a towel at me. If you hurt yourself, it will affect your studies even more. Mom, I said, my voice breaking, please listen to me. I am really sick. Something is seriously wrong with me. She sighed heavily. Get dressed. You will be late for class. I managed to get through my morning classes, but by afternoon the headache was so intense I could barely see straight. Emily found me in the student union head down on the table. Grace, this has gone on long enough, she said firmly after seeing my condition. I am taking you to the community clinic downtown right now. They accept patients without insurance referrals. Too weak to argue, I let her drive me to the clinic. The waiting room was crowded, but Emily explained my situation to the receptionist, who, after seeing me nearly collapse into a chair, moved me up in the queue. Dr. Jessica Brown was in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened intently as I explained my symptoms, and the timeline growing increasingly concerned as I showed her the lump. "How long have you been experiencing balance issues?" she asked, examining the lump carefully. "About 3 weeks," I replied. "But it is getting worse." "And the headaches? How severe are they, on a scale of 1 to 10? "Most days, about a 7, but sometimes a 9 or 10. She frowned, making notes in my chart. "I would like to run some blood tests today and get an X-ray of your neck. This needs immediate attention." For the first time in months, someone was taking me seriously. I felt tears of relief spill over. "Thank you," I whispered. Grace, Dr. Brown said gently, "Why did you wait so long to seek medical attention?" I explained about my parents' dismissal, my mother's position as a nurse, and the cancelled appointment. Her expression darkened. "That is concerning. Very concerning. Medical neglect is a serious issue, especially in someone your age." The blood tests revealed elevated inflammatory markers, and the X-ray showed a mass that Dr. Brown said needed further investigation. She immediately wrote a referral for an MRI scan. "I have scheduled you for an MRI the day after tomorrow," she said, handing me the paperwork. "This is urgent, Grace. You must get this scan. If your parents interfere, call me immediately." Emily drove me home, promising to pick me up for the MRI appointment. I felt a mix of validation and terror. Someone believed me, but what would the MRI reveal? When I arrived home, the house was quiet. I went to my room to hide the medical paperwork, but as I opened my door, I found my mother rifling through my desk. "What are you doing?" I demanded. She spun around, startled. "Where were you? You were supposed to be at the library study group." "I was at a doctor's appointment," I admitted, too tired to lie. Her eyes narrowed. "You went to a doctor behind my back again." "I had to, Mom. No one here is listening to me." She spotted the folder in my hand. "What is that?" "Nothing," I said, trying to hide it behind my back. She lunged forward and grabbed it, opening it, to find the medical paperwork and MRI referral. Her face contorted with anger. "How dare you?" she hissed. "After everything I have told you." "Mom, please," I begged. "The doctor says this is serious. I need this MRI." But she was not listening. She tore the papers into pieces, then stormed downstairs. I followed her to the kitchen, where she threw the pieces into the sink and lit them with a match. "You are destroying any evidence I have a medical problem," I screamed, watching my paperwork burn. "Why are you doing this?" "You are trying to destroy this family with your constant need for attention," she shouted back. "Do you know what people will think if word gets out that my daughter is running around to strange doctors claiming to be ill? My reputation at the clinic will be ruined." My father came in, alarmed by the shouting. "What is going on?" "Your daughter went to some clinic downtown and got some quack to order expensive tests she does not need," my mother said. "Dad," I pleaded, "the doctor says I need an MRI. The lump is serious." He looked from me to my mother, then sighed. "Grace, listen to your mother. She knows what she is talking about." "She is burning my medical referrals," I cried, pointing to the sink where the ashes of my paperwork smoldered. "Karen," he said weakly, "maybe that is going too far." "Do not undermine me, Thomas," my mother snapped. "Grace needs to learn she cannot manipulate us like this." I could not believe what was happening. "You are both insane," I whispered, backing away. This is my life we are talking about. I ran to my room and called Emily, sobbing as I explained what had happened. I will call Dr. Brown, she promised. We will figure this out. Pack a bag, Grace. You are staying with me tonight. 2 hours later, Dr. Brown called me back. She had spoken with the radiologist and explained the situation. They would still perform the MRI, and she would handle the paperwork and insurance issues herself. This is extremely unusual, she said, but given the circumstances and the urgency of your condition, we are making an exception. Emily will bring you to the hospital tomorrow, and I will meet you there. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. But it was overshadowed by the devastating realization that my own parents were actively preventing me from getting the medical care I desperately needed. The next few weeks were a blur of worsening symptoms and increasing isolation. I split my time between Emily's apartment and my parents' house, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The MRI had been performed, but Dr. Brown was still waiting for a specialist to review the results before discussing them with me. My academic performance continued to decline. I was barely passing my classes, and several professors had expressed concern. The headaches were now nearly constant, and I carried prescription strength, pain medication everywhere. One afternoon, I was at the university bookstore searching for a reference book for my biochemistry paper. The fluorescent light seemed unusually bright, causing my headache to intensify. As I reached for a book on a high shelf, the room began to spin. I tried to steady myself against the bookcase, but my legs gave way beneath me. I was vaguely aware of books tumbling down around me as I collapsed. Voices shouted in alarm. A student kneeled beside me, asking if I was okay. I tried to respond, but my words came out slurred and incoherent. The left side of my face felt numb and my vision blurred. "Someone call 911, a voice shouted. I drifted in and out of consciousness as paramedics arrived. They placed me on a stretcher, attached monitors to my chest, and started an IV line. Through the haze, I heard them speaking urgently about my vital signs and pupillary response. The ambulance siren wailed as we sped through traffic. I felt a cool hand on mine and turned to see Emily sitting beside me. I had no idea how she had gotten there. "Hang in there, Grace," she said, her voice cracking. "We are almost at the hospital." In the emergency room, doctors and nurses swarmed around me. A doctor shined a light in my eyes and asked me questions I could barely comprehend. Everything was happening so fast, yet I felt like I was moving in slow motion. "Patient is a 20-year-old female with a known mass at the base of the skull," a doctor announced. "Order an immediate CT scan and contact neurology for consult." I was wheeled into a room with a large machine. The CT scan was quick but disorienting. Back in the emergency room, a nurse informed me that they had contacted my parents. "No," I protested weakly. "They will not help." The nurse looked confused, but reassured me that my parents were already on their way. Sure enough, my mother and father arrived 20 minutes later. My mother looked furious, while my father seemed genuinely worried. "What is going on here?" my mother demanded of the nearest nurse. "Why was my daughter brought to the emergency room?" "Mrs. Wilson," the nurse replied professionally. "Your daughter collapsed at the university bookstore. She is showing neurological symptoms that require immediate attention." "This is ridiculous," my mother scoffed. "She is obviously just exhausted from studying. There was no need for all this drama." The emergency room doctor overheard and approached. "Mrs. Wilson, I am Dr. Patel. Your daughter's symptoms are serious and consistent with increased intracranial pressure. We need to perform an MRI immediately." "She already had an MRI at some clinic downtown," my mother said dismissively. "This is just her way of getting attention." Dr. Patel looked shocked. Do you have the results of this previous MRI? No, because there was nothing wrong with her, my mother insisted. Just then, Dr. Brown arrived slightly out of breath. I am Dr. Jessica Brown Grace's primary care physician. I ordered the previous MRI, but we are still awaiting the specialist's full report. You, my mother hissed. You encouraged this behavior. Dr. Brown stood her ground. Mrs. Wilson, as a medical professional yourself, you must understand the seriousness of your daughter's symptoms. The preliminary MRI showed a significant mass that requires immediate attention. This is absurd, my mother sputtered. I want to see these so-called results myself. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Patel said firmly, I must ask you to step outside if you cannot remain calm. Your daughter needs medical attention now. My father placed a restraining hand on my mother's arm. Karen, maybe we should listen. Fine, she snapped. Run your tests. But when they come back normal, I expect a full apology. They wheeled me into the MRI room again. This time, the procedure seemed to take forever. I lay in the narrow tube, trying not to panic, as the machine clunked and whirred around me. When it was over, they took me to a private room to wait for the results. Emily sat with me while my parents waited outside. Dr. Brown came in briefly to check on me. The neurologist is reviewing your scans now, she said. We should have answers soon. 2 hours later, Dr. Patel returned with another doctor he introduced as Dr. Sharma, a neurosurgeon. Their serious expressions made my heart sink. We would like your parents to join us for this discussion, Dr. Sharma said. Is that okay with you? I nodded, and a nurse went to get them. My mother entered with her arms crossed defensively, while my father looked increasingly worried. Dr. Sharma pulled up my MRI images on a screen. Even to my untrained eye, the large mass at the base of my skull was clearly visible. Grace, Dr. Sharma began the MRI, shows a significant tumor located at the base of your skull pressing against your cerebellum and brainstem. Based on the imaging characteristics, we believe this is a glioblastoma, an aggressive type of brain cancer. The room went silent. I felt strangely detached, as if I were watching this happen to someone else. This type of tumor typically grows rapidly, he continued. Given the size and location, it has likely been developing for 6 to 8 months. Had it been caught earlier, treatment options might have been different. I looked at my parents. My father had collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. My mother stood frozen, her expression, one of disbelief and dawning horror. What does this mean? My father asked, his voice barely audible. Grace will need emergency surgery to relieve the pressure on her brain and remove as much of the tumor as possible, Dr. Sharma explained. This will be followed by radiation and chemotherapy. What is her prognosis? My mother whispered. All her previous anger gone. Dr. Sharma hesitated. Glioblastoma is one of the most aggressive forms of brain cancer. Given the late stage of discovery and the location of the tumor, this will be challenging. But Grace is young and otherwise healthy, which works in her favor. My mother swayed slightly, and my father stood to steady her. The color had drained from both their faces, leaving them looking ghastly under the harsh hospital lights. This cannot be happening, my mother murmured. There must be some mistake. I am afraid the imaging is quite clear, Dr. Sharma said gently. We need to move quickly. As the doctors continued explaining the treatment plan, I watched my parents' world crumble around them. The reality they had so desperately tried to deny was now staring them in the face, impossible to ignore any longer. I was transferred to a private room in the neurology ward that evening. The doctors had inserted a drain to relieve some of the pressure on my brain, which had helped with the worst of my symptoms. Surgery was scheduled for the following morning. My parents sat awkwardly in the corner of the room, barely speaking. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken accusations and guilt. Emily had gone home to get some of my things, but promised to return soon. A nurse came in to check my vitals and adjust my medication. "Your aunt is here," she informed me. "She says her name is Lisa. Should I send her in?" I nodded eagerly. Aunt Lisa must have taken the first flight out after hearing the news. She burst into the room, her travel bag still in hand. "Grace," she breathed, rushing to my bedside and hugging me carefully. I came as soon as Emily called me. My mother stood up abruptly. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" "What do you think I am doing here?" Karen Aunt Lisa snapped. "I am here for Grace, since apparently her own parents could not be bothered to take her health concerns seriously." "You have no right to judge us," my mother said defensively. "You have no idea what we have been dealing with." "Oh, I have a pretty good idea," Aunt Lisa retorted. "Grace has been emailing me for months about the lump, and how you both dismissed her concerns. She sent me photos, Karen. Photos of a growing tumor that you, a nurse, claimed was nothing." My father stood up, placing himself between the sisters. "Lisa, please. This is not the time or place." "When is the time?" Aunt Lisa demanded. "After the surgery. After months of treatment that could have been avoided if you had listened to your daughter." My mother's face crumpled. "You think I do not know that? You think I do not realize what we have done?" "What you have done is medical neglect, Aunt Lisa," said her voice shaking with anger. "Grace could have died because of your denial." "Stop it," I said weakly from the bed. "Please, just stop fighting." They all turned to look at me, momentarily chastened. Aunt Lisa took a deep breath and sat on the edge of my bed. "Grace needs to know the truth, Karen. All of it." My mother paled. "Lisa, no." "What truth?" I asked, looking between them. Aunt Lisa took my hand. "Grace, there is a history of brain tumors in our family. Your grandmother died of glioblastoma when she was 45. So did our Uncle Robert." I stared at her in shock, then looked at my mother. "You never told me this. Why would you hide something so important?" My mother sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. "I did not want you to live in fear. After Mom died, I spent years terrified that every headache was a tumor. I did not want that for you and Lily. So, instead, you ignored actual symptoms," Aunt Lisa asked incredulously. "Karen, that makes no sense." "I thought if I acknowledged it, it would make it real," my mother whispered. "I could not face losing her the way we lost Mom." My father, who had been silent, suddenly broke down. "I should have done something," he sobbed. "I knew something was wrong, but I just kept deferring to your mother. I failed you, Grace. I am so sorry." The door opened, and Lily walked in, her eyes red from crying. She had clearly heard at least part of the conversation from the hallway. "Is Grace going to die?" she asked in a small voice. "No one is dying," Aunt Lisa said firmly. "Grace is going to fight this, and we are all going to help her." Dr. Sharma came in then to explain the surgical procedure scheduled for the morning. He would attempt to remove as much of the tumor as possible, but its location made complete removal challenging. Due to the delayed diagnosis, he explained gently, the tumor has grown into areas that are difficult to access surgically without risking significant neurological damage. "What are her chances?" my father asked, his voice hollow. "Given the size and location of the tumor and the fact that it is a glioblastoma, the 5-year survival rate is approximately 30%, Dr. Sharma replied. "But Grace is young and otherwise healthy, which improves her odds." The room fell silent as the gravity of my situation sank in. 30%. Less than a third chance of surviving the next 5 years. Can I have some time alone with my parents? I asked after Dr. Sharma left. Aunt Lisa and Lily reluctantly stepped out, leaving me with the two people who had dismissed my symptoms for months. Why? I asked, simply tears streaming down my face. Why did you not believe me? My mother moved to sit beside me, hesitantly reaching for my hand. I was terrified, Grace. After watching my mother die from the same disease, I could not bear the thought of losing you too. So I convinced myself it was nothing serious, that you were just stressed or seeking attention. That does not make sense, I said. If you were so worried about brain tumors, you have been extra cautious. Fear makes people do irrational things, she admitted. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. I know now how wrong I was. And you, I asked, looking at my father. Why did you not help me? He could not meet my eyes. I have always deferred to your mother on health matters. She was the nurse, the expert. But that is no excuse. I should have stood up for you, taken you to a doctor myself. I was weak and cowardly, and now you are paying the price for it. Do you know what it felt like? I asked, my voice breaking. To know something was seriously wrong with me, to be scared and in pain and have the two people who are supposed to protect me tell me I was making it up. Do you have any idea how alone I felt? They both broke down, then decades of composure crumbling in the face of what they had done. My mother sobbed into her hands while my father knelt beside the bed, begging for forgiveness I was not sure I could give. I do not know if I can ever forgive you, I said honestly. But right now I need parents. I need you to be there for me through whatever comes next. Can you do that? They both nodded, wiping their tears. Dr. Brown knocked and entered the room. Grace, we need to start prepping you for surgery in the morning. Your parents can stay until then if you want. As the night wore on, we talked more openly than we ever had before. About fear and denial, about family patterns we had never recognized, about the wall of perfectionism my mother had built around herself that had nearly cost me my life. It was painful, raw, and necessary. Morning came too quickly. As the nurses prepared me for surgery, my family gathered around my bed. Even in my fear, I noticed how my mother had aged overnight, how my father seemed smaller, somehow diminished by guilt. I love you, I told them all as they wheeled me toward the operating room, no matter what happens. As the anesthesia took hold, my last conscious thought was a prayer that I would wake up again to have the chance to heal not just my body, but my broken family as well. The night before my surgery was the longest of my life. After my family left, I lay awake in the sterile hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of monitors my only company. Every possible outcome played through my mind, like a horror movie I could not turn off. Would I wake up from the surgery? Would I be paralyzed? Would I still be me? I thought about all the things I had yet to do. I had never fallen in love, never traveled outside the United States, never even finished college. At 20 years old, my life felt both barely begun and possibly ending. Around midnight, Emily returned with a bag of my things. She had brought my favorite pajamas, my journal, and a small stuffed elephant I had kept since childhood. I thought you might want Mr. Peanuts, she said, placing the worn elephant beside me, for good luck tomorrow. I clutched the stuffed animal gratefully. What would I do without you? You will never have to find out, she promised, settling into the chair beside my bed. I am staying right here tonight. Later, a group of my classmates arrived with handmade cards and a basket of my favorite snacks for after the surgery. They crowded around my bed, trying to keep the conversation light despite the gravity of the situation. Professor Miller says, "Your spot in the program is secure," my lab partner, Jason, assured me. "Take all the time you need to recover." Their visit lifted my spirits. Despite everything, I was not alone. I had people who believed in me when my own family had not. Aunt Lisa returned after midnight and insisted Emily go home to rest. "I will take the night shift," she said, settling into the chair with a book and a thermos of coffee. In the quiet hours that followed, Aunt Lisa shared stories about our family that I had never heard before, about my grandmother's battle with the same cancer that now grew inside me, about my mother's breakdown after her death. "Your mom was only 23 when she lost her mother," Aunt Lisa explained. "She never really processed that grief. Instead, she became hyper-controlled, as if she could prevent bad things from happening by sheer force of will." "That does not excuse what she did," I said. "No, it does not," Aunt Lisa agreed. "But understanding might help you heal eventually, not just your body, but your heart, too." Dawn broke with nurses coming to prep me for surgery. My parents and Lily arrived early, all looking as if they had not slept at all. My mother approached hesitantly, her usual confident demeanor gone. "I brought you this," she said, holding out a small silver pendant. "It was your grandmother's. She wore it through all her treatments." I accepted it, silently letting her fasten it around my neck. Dr. Sharma came in with his team to explain the procedure one final time. The surgery would take approximately 10 hours. They would remove as much of the tumor as possible without damaging critical brain structures. As they prepared to wheel me to the operating room, my entire family gathered around. My father held my hand tightly, tears streaming down his face. "We will be right here when you wake up," he promised. The operating room was brighter and colder than I had imagined. The team worked efficiently around me, attaching monitors and preparing equipment. Dr. Sharma squeezed my hand reassuringly before the anesthesiologist placed a mask over my face. "Count backward from 10, he instructed. I made it to 7 before darkness claimed me. My next memory was of pain. Dull, throbbing pain radiating from the base of my skull. My throat felt raw and my mouth was desert dry. I tried to open my eyes, but my lids felt impossibly heavy. "Grace, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." I recognized Dr. Brown's voice and felt her hand in mine. With enormous effort, I gave a weak squeeze. "She is responsive," Dr. Brown announced to someone else in the room. "Grace, you are in recovery. The surgery is over. You did great." Over the next few hours, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I was aware of people around me speaking in hushed tones. Other times, there was only darkness and the persistent pain. When I finally managed to open my eyes fully, I found my mother asleep in a chair beside my bed, looking older and more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. My movement must have alerted her, because she jerked awake immediately. "Grace," she breathed, "you are awake. Let me call the nurse." After a flurry of activity checking my vitals and cognitive responses, Dr. Sharma came to explain the outcome of the surgery. "We were able to remove approximately 90% of the tumor," he said. "That is better than we initially expected. However, there are still cancer cells we could not reach surgically. You will need to begin radiation and chemotherapy once you have recovered from the surgery." "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Now you rest and heal," he said. "In about 2 weeks you will begin 6 months of combined radiation and chemotherapy treatments." The following days were a blur of pain management, physical therapy assessments, and visits from specialists. A bandage covered the back of my head where they had removed part of my skull to access the tumor. I would have a scar there for the rest of my life. Emily visited daily, bringing notes from classes and updates from friends. Aunt Lisa extended her stay indefinitely, renting a small apartment near the hospital. My sister Lily spent hours researching glioblastoma, peppering my doctors with questions about treatment protocols and clinical trials. Most surprisingly, my parents transformed before my eyes. My mother took a leave of absence from the clinic to be with me full-time. She attended every consultation, taking detailed notes and asking insightful questions. At night, when she thought I was asleep, I would hear her crying quietly in the hallway. My father, too, stepped up in ways I had never seen before. He challenged insurance denials, researched alternative treatments, and coordinated with my professors to arrange for medical leave from the university. 6 weeks after my surgery, I began the most brutal phase of my treatment. 5 days a week, I would go to the hospital for radiation treatments. Each session lasted only minutes, but left me increasingly exhausted. Simultaneously, I took chemotherapy pills that made me violently ill. My hair began falling out in clumps. One morning I woke to find my pillow covered in strands of my once thick brown hair. My mother found me sobbing in the bathroom. "Let me help you," she said gently, picking up a pair of scissors from the counter. Together we cut off what remained of my hair. Then she shaved her own head in solidarity. "We will get through this together," she promised our twin bald reflections staring back at us in the mirror. The side effects of treatment were relentless. Nausea that no medication seemed to touch, fatigue so profound that walking from my bed to the bathroom required a rest break, mouth sores that made eating agony. Through it all, my support system never wavered. Emily organized a rotation of friends to visit, so I was never alone during my lowest moments. Aunt Lisa took over managing the household so my parents could focus on my care. Even Lily stepped up, becoming my fierce advocate at every doctor's appointment. My mother, once my greatest denier, became my most dedicated caregiver. She tracked every medication, every symptom, every test result, with military precision. One night, when the nausea was particularly bad, she sat beside my bed for hours, applying cool cloths to my forehead, and telling me stories from her nursing days to distract me. "I will never forgive myself for not believing you," she whispered when she thought I was asleep, "but I promise I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." My father took extended leave from his job to be present for my treatments. He would carry me to the car when I was too weak to walk and sit reading aloud to me during radiation sessions. Lily, inspired by my battle, announced her intention to become an oncologist. "I want to help people like you," she told me. "I want to make sure no one else has to go through what you did." 4 months into my treatment, I began attending a support group for young adult cancer patients. Connecting with others who understood the unique challenges of facing mortality in your 20s was surprisingly healing. With their encouragement, I started a blog documenting my journey, hoping to raise awareness about the importance of advocating for yourself medically. 6 months after my diagnosis, I completed my final round of radiation. The follow-up MRI showed no new tumor growth, though I would need ongoing monitoring for years to come. The statistical odds were still against me, but I had already defied expectations by responding so well to treatment. That night, my family and friends gathered for a small celebration. Looking around at the people who had carried me through the darkest period of my life, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was still anger toward my parents for their initial denial, but also gratitude for how they had shown up once the truth could no longer be ignored. "To Grace," Emily toasted, raising her glass. "The strongest person I know." "To second chances," I added quietly, looking directly at my parents. "And to truth, no matter how painful." 1 year after my diagnosis, I stood in the auditorium of Northwestern University, wearing a graduation cap that covered my still growing hair. I had returned to complete my degree, though, at a slower pace than before. My professors had been incredibly accommodating, allowing me to take classes part-time while continuing my quarterly MRI scans and follow-up treatments. The journey had changed me profoundly. I no longer wanted to be a medical doctor. Instead, I had switched my major to psychology with a focus on psycho-oncology, the psychological impact of cancer on patients and their families. My own experience had shown me how desperately this support was needed. My family sat in the front row, cheering loudly as I crossed the stage. My mother, once so concerned with appearances, now unabashedly wiped tears from her eyes. My father, no longer passive, stood and whistled. Lily, now a freshman pre-med student, held up a homemade sign. Aunt Lisa, who had permanently relocated to be near us, took photos. Our family dynamics had transformed over the past year. The wall of perfectionism my mother had built had crumbled, revealing a vulnerable woman who had been operating from fear for decades. My father had found his voice, no longer deferring important decisions to others. Lily and I had developed a closeness that had never existed before my illness. It had not been an easy road. There were still moments of anger and resentment that would surface unexpectedly. To address these deeper wounds, my mother and I had been attending family therapy together for months. I used denial as a shield my entire life, she admitted during one particularly intense session. When my mother got sick, I convinced myself she would be fine until it was too late. I did the same thing with you, Grace. I cannot change what I did, but I am trying to understand why I did it. The therapist had helped us recognize the intergenerational patterns of avoiding difficult emotions that had nearly cost me my life. Slowly, painfully, we were learning new ways to communicate and cope with fear. After graduation, I launched a small nonprofit organization called Hear Me Now, dedicated to supporting young patients whose medical concerns were being dismissed by family or healthcare providers. We provided resources, advocacy training, and emergency medical consultations for those who felt unheard. The work was healing for me. Each person I helped was a reminder that my suffering had purpose, that something good could come from the darkest chapter of my life. My health remained stable, though the shadow of recurrence would always hang over me. Every 3 months I would hold my breath as the MRI machine clunked around me, praying for good news. So far, the scans had shown no new growth, though my doctors remained cautiously optimistic rather than definitive about my future. On the anniversary of my collapse at the bookstore, I organized a fundraising walk for brain cancer research. Hundreds of people from the university and community showed up, many wearing T-shirts with our slogan, "Believe Patients." As I addressed the crowd, I saw my parents listening intently from the front row. "Sometimes the people who love you most can hurt you the most," I said into the microphone. Not out of malice, but out of fear, denial, or their own unresolved trauma. My parents ignored my symptoms for months because facing the possibility of my illness was too terrifying for them. My mother lowered her head, but I continued. It would be easy to stay angry, to never forgive. But I have learned that healing requires honesty, not just about what happened, but about why it happened. Understanding does not excuse the past, but it creates possibility for the future. I looked out at the sea of faces, many nodding in recognition of their own family struggles. The most important lesson I have learned is this: you must be your own advocate. Listen to your body. Trust your instincts. And if no one will listen, keep speaking until someone does. Your life may depend on it. After the event, a young woman approached me in tears. "My parents are doing the same thing to me," she whispered. "They say my symptoms are just anxiety, but I know something is wrong." I gave her Dr. Brown's information and a hug. "You are not alone," I promised, "and you deserve to be heard." That night, as my family gathered for dinner, I looked around the table at the people who had failed me so profoundly and then fought alongside me so fiercely. The journey had been complicated, painful, and ultimately transformative for all of us. I have an announcement, I said, setting down my fork. My latest scan showed no evidence of disease, Dr. Sharma says. If I remain stable for another year, he will classify me as in remission. The table erupted in joy and tears. My mother gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. "You did it," she whispered. "You beat it." "We beat it," I corrected her. I could not have done it alone. Later, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, my father asked the question that had lingered unspoken for months. "Do you forgive us, Grace?" I considered carefully before answering. "I am working on it. Some days are easier than others. But I understand now that forgiveness is not a destination, but a process. And it is one I am committed to for all our sakes." The lump that nearly took my life gave me something unexpected, the chance to build a family based on truth rather than appearance, on vulnerability rather than perfectionism. Every day I wake up grateful for that second chance, aware of how close I came to losing everything. If my story teaches anything, it is this: sometimes those who should protect us fail. But that does not mean we should stop fighting for ourselves. The tumor almost killed me, but in the end, it gave me the greatest gift: the courage to live my real life, not the one others expected of me. Have you ever had to advocate for yourself when no one would listen? How did you find the strength to keep pushing? Share your story in the comments below. Do not forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their voice matters. Thank you for being part of my journey, and remember, always trust yourself even when others doubt you.